Good morning, everyone. Let's give the musicians and our band a big hand. Woohoo! She got it. All right, change mics. Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you today. That was a beautiful song. Who doesn't love a beautiful song about love? Do you just sort of want to float away? like, what's that, lazy river? When you go to hotels and they have that big river that goes around the hotel and we just sort of float away onto the beautiful feeling of being in the flow. And we have been in the flow all morning. In case you're new here, I see some faces I don't actually recognize, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Reverend Dr. Alice Reid, and I'm the spiritual director here at Centers for Spiritual Living, Capistrano Valley. And I'm really happy to be with you today. Today is Palm Sunday. And while we don't necessarily celebrate Christian holidays, we acknowledge the wisdom that runs through all faiths, just as we did when we lit these beautiful candles and began our service this morning. We honored all the spiritual truth that weaves through all spiritual paths. And so there is some deep wisdom to be gleaned, to be plumbed from the story of Palm Sunday. But first I want to start with acknowledging my colleague, Reverend Karen Allen, who tag-teamed with me all month to, yes, and beautiful job of, thank you, Reverend Karen. And I love this month's theme of what if and leaning into possibility. And we've looked at that idea of working with possibility, of engaging possibility, of even courting possibility. You like that idea of courting possibility? Right? Courting, love, courting this idea that anything is possible, that there is this pure potentiality that we're working with. I love that. And I know that this philosophy, if you're new to this philosophy, you buckle up. Buckle up because we are possibilitarians. Oh, I practiced that made-up word all week. Possibilitarians. Yeah, you just mumble in the middle and get to tarians. You'll be okay. What I know about somebody who really believes in possibility is that that is someone who is firmly grounded in the power of spirit that moves through all life. And what I know about the power of spirit is it does not discriminate. It gives of itself freely to all who will drink from its chalice, to all who will accept the good that comes to them and freely allow it to move through them. The only thing that gets in the way is our small thinking, is our belief in an effect or some situation as the reality of what's going on, when in fact it is temporarily moving through life. Every effect, every condition, every situation, every experience, every relationship, everything that you move through is temporary. Well, sometimes it doesn't feel temporary because we think it again, and then we do it again. Sometimes we end up marrying the same person over and over again. Right? Sometimes we end up taking that same job with the same boss. They change meat suits, but it's the same person. And that happens when we aren't aware of our part in it. We aren't aware of the part that we play in making space for God to flow through us. And so today, we're going to wrap up this beautiful month of what if by looking at what it means to be a Possibili-tarian. But first I want to talk about the energy that we're working with from a collective point of view, so that when you drop into this collective consciousness of it's not possible, it's not going to work, it's sometimes it's just this really sucks, right? I want to talk about that energy that we often stumble upon, and it has deep roots in civilization. It has deep roots in all existence. And so if we look at this idea of Palm Sunday, and we go back to that mythologized story of the master teacher, Jesus, who rode into Jerusalem triumphant on the back of a donkey, which was a sign of royalty, of exaltation. And as he rode into Jerusalem, they threw palms before him and welcomed him like royalty. And they cried, Hosanna, Hosanna. Did you know that Hosanna literally translates into save me, save us? Yeah. Some of you who've been at this philosophy for a while, you're catching on to where I'm going. You're probably already there. Here we had a great deal of collective hope. The Jewish people had a long history of oppression, and the Romans loved to come in and just keep them under their thumb. And so the Jews saw Jesus as their savior. They saw him as the one that would fix it. They saw him as the one that would make it all better. And at first he came in and he sanctified the temple, and he cleared out the money changers, and he began to do all the things that you would expect a savior to do. And then he found himself before men in power of the day. And asking him, was he truly powerful? Many of you know the story. He did not embrace the mantle of human regal kingship power over people. He didn't. He said he wanted no part of that because he knew the larger truth. And I think that collective hope just vanished when he didn't vanquish their enemies and fix everything. And I think that this pattern is present right here today. Oh, the wars, the war in Iran, the gas prices, the grocery prices, somebody's got to fix that. We continue to step into the pattern of abdicating our power over the worldly things. That doesn't mean that you can't be passionate about supporting people and lifting up life. But this idea of Hosanna, this idea of save me, is the idea of someone who has completely let go of all their power, has given it over to temporary and material things that are not the source of our power. And so for us to step into this idea, this beautiful month-long theme of what if, and this idea of possibility, it requires that we accept our part in the whole play of life. We accept the power that is moving through us. We begin to understand that we have been given the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. We have been given agency. We are Possibili-tarians because when we lean into that place of all possibility, it opens the stream of source as it flows through us. It opens the floodgates. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes being a human being who knows the power of pure potentiality, who understands how the flow of source moves through humanity, can be downright frustrating. I talked to somebody yesterday who was struggling, a relative, and And it was this person's fault and that person's fault and someone else's fault. And the struggle that they were experiencing, it's real. I'm not denying that. But what I am recognizing is that they have placed all of the power outside of themselves. And it isn't until we begin to understand that we have been endowed with the power of the creative process to experience life as we imagine it, as we allow ourselves to shift our thinking. That's where possibility begins to be born into our reality. I have somebody I care about who has a diagnosis, and that diagnosis was, I'm used to the cultural norm that when you get a diagnosis, you fight like hell, you eradicate it, you get rid of it, you make sure it's not going to be in your life, you push it away. And the science's best treatment for this is you're going to live with it. And we're going to give you things to augment your body, and you're going to be fine. And I caught myself in the middle of this conversation. I love this person. And I caught myself in the middle of the conversation saying, I have to change my thinking. I have to change how I carry this global collective thought. Because I'm a big one for just riding that lazy river of consciousness that goes through humanity. I'm on Facebook. And picking up the little cues from the community around me. But if I want to have a different experience, if I want to live from pure potential and possibility, I have to be willing to stop myself and to begin to catch an openness, a new idea, a place where I can engage. Back in the day when I first came into this teaching, I remember we had this little thing that all the Centers for Spiritual Living were doing. We were called Religious Science back then, and we were told this story about a woman who said, "I have no complaints whatsoever." Remember that? Anybody remember that? And did you put the rubber band on your wrist? And then did you snap the rubber band every time you had a complaint? Well, I think we might need to do that again. I think we might need to begin to snap the rubber band so that we can snap ourselves out of that place where we start to get into that groove of it's not working, whatever it might be. I have been involved in this philosophy long enough to know that there is no condition that has more power than the power of the movement of Source through an open mind and an open heart. And a person who is willing, I've seen it over and over again, a person who is willing to change their thinking, to change their mind, to begin to have a new thought. We are called New Thought. Yeah. We are a new thought movement, and that new thought, that new idea gives birth to possibility, gives birth to opportunity. It gives birth to pure potential. So this idea of being a Possibili-tarian has us imagining, if we will. We've been working with the song from the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Pure Imagination. And so you might have caught that all the talk titles for all 5 weeks have been lines from that song. And so to step into that place of pure imagination, well, it requires us to be willing to make room for pure imagination, to make room for a new idea, to be that place where God uses our mind and our bodies and our whole selves and our lives to express itself in powerful ways. The trick is to not be seduced like those beloveds in ancient Jerusalem, to not be seduced to the idea of separation. And when we get seduced by this idea of separation, it's easy for us to drop into seeing us and thems, seeing yours and mine, seeing left and right. It's easy for us to begin to step into that, but I have to tell you, I have just looking at the political chasm that we have in this country, I have people I love on both sides of the aisle, and I got to tell you, they have really good intentions. They have really good intentions, depending upon. I'm not sure I agree with how those intentions are being played out, or how they're being expressed, or how they're being gone after. But I know that there's a purity of an idea that starts with, I really want the best. And then we get all mucked up with, but the best is my best, right? The best is, oh, what the heck are you doing? That's not for the best. We get caught up in that. And this work of being a Possibili-tarian, this work of being a religious scientist, of living this philosophy full out, it requires some real, how do my friends say, kahunas. It really requires that we are willing to look a discordant situation, an effect, a condition squarely, and to choose differently, to choose love, to choose beauty, to choose freedom, to choose oneness. Oneness may sound like a platitude. It's the real deal. What would the world be like if we knew we weren't separate? Amazing, absolutely. That people would be going out of their way to take care of each other, because they would know that when I take care of you, I'm taking care of me. And when you're taking care of me, you're taking care of you. They would know that we are all born from the same stardust of power and presence. And so this idea of being a Possibili-tarian requires some mettle. It requires some remembering. It requires that we say no to separation. And it ain't easy. There are people that I think their behavior is hurtful. And I'm not saying that when someone is actively hurting someone, you say, I'm one with you. I'm not saying that we pretend anything. But I am saying that if we start from a place of oneness, if we come to that place of all possibility and all potentiality, if we remember who we are and who that person is, something interesting happens. And you might notice this in your own relationships. Like when you begin to really own your stuff, when you begin to move through life and begin to shift and change your thinking, that person that was annoying you all the time, did they get nicer? No, you changed. The eyes that you look at them with has changed. The heart that you love them with has changed. The mind that you enter into conversation with them has changed. And you cannot help but affect people when you're willing to do your part. And I know it's no fair they should do their part first, right? I shouldn't have to do my part first. They should do their part first. No fair. You're in this room right now or listening to me on Facebook or YouTube because some part of you has signed up for this job. You have signed up to be a way shower. You have signed up to be a light bearer. You have signed up to change the world. One thought, one relationship, one behavior, one activity, one choice, at a time. Ernest Holmes, one of my favorite quotes. I remember the first time I read it in the Science of Mind textbook. It landed. And so on page 124, paragraph 2 of the Science of Mind textbook, Holmes says, "We arrive at a consciousness of unity only in such a degree as we see that what we're looking for, we're looking with, and we're looking at." Thank you very much. And so every Sunday when we speak, we end with some kind of a spiritual practice. And so I'm going to end with a spiritual mind treatment, an affirmative prayer. And this spiritual mind treatment, this I call it neural pathway regeneration. It's how we change our thinking. And so I invite you to allow yourself to receive these words, to change your thinking, to shift your mind, to open your heart, to be a Possibili-tarian. And so in this open and inviting place, we recognize that there is one infinite reality, and it expresses itself in billions of ways. It expresses itself in the atheist, it expresses itself in the Christian, and it expresses itself in the person who has no religion. It expresses itself perfectly because it knows that it has been invited. It has been invited to infuse itself in the lives of every human being and every creature. And so this morning, we are invited to invite it, to invite possibility, to invite potentiality, to invite an open heart and an open mind so that we can walk out of here today being part of the solution, bringing more love into the world, bringing more freedom into the world, bringing more hope and unity into the world. Just by being exactly who we are, conscious, loving human beings. And so I know this isn't difficult for us. It just requires that each one stay open, awake, and available to a new possibility when there doesn't seem to be any way, to a new way when there doesn't seem any hope. And so we hold that space within us. We hold that power and that presence and that flow of spirit. We allow it to move through us in ways that we couldn't have imagined because we are Possibili-tarians, because we are filled with openness and willingness to walk out into the world and be the change we want to see. And so I celebrate all the different ways that God shows up in each and every one. And I know that each one of us moves through this week, this holy week, if you will, being open to newness, being open to wholeness, being open to grace. As we anchor this prayer and surrender ourselves to the allness of all life by saying together, and so it is.